Okay, we'll come to order now, and welcome to the February 9th, 2021 meeting of the Salem Planning Commission. Shelby, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Augustine?
Here.
Commissioner Griggs?
Here.
Commissioner Heller? Commissioner Heller?
She's on mute. You're on mute, Lisa. I know she's here.
Here.
Commissioner Copcho?
I'm here.
Commissioner Levin?
Here.
Commissioner McKinley?
Here.
Commissioner Pollock?
Here.
Commissioner Schweikart?
Here.
And I don't believe Commissioner Slater has joined us yet.
Thank you. So we'll move on to item 3, which is our public comment. We have Mr. Carver that's going to join us. And Mr. Carver, for the record, would you please state your name and address? And you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Wait. There. For the record, my name is Phil Carver. I live at 1007 Newport Road, Southeast Salem, and I'm representing 350 Salem in these comments. I'd like to give my greetings to President Griggs and Vice President McKinley, to the commission members, and to the staff. The 350 Salem has been very involved in the Our Salem process from the beginning and was really instrumental in starting the climate action process. I'm not going to read my comments, but I hope you can read them later if you haven't already. I want to thank the planning staff for all the hard work they've done in both the Our Salem process and the climate action plan. We've had many meetings with them. They've been very open. It's been a very good process of communication. And 350 Salem also offers, if it would be helpful, the promise of helping with public involvement once the city council has made its final decision. I've gone to a couple of neighborhood association meetings related to the Our Salem process just independently, but we would certainly have members in most neighborhoods, and we would be happy to have someone tag along, not officially or unofficially, and explain the importance of climate and the nature of the emergency. Normally, amending the comp plan ahead of some other process would not be a big problem. But right now, we have a climate emergency. And if the comp plan is not amended to be consistent with the council's goal of a 50% reduction in 2035, we'll never get there. And we can't wait for the next cycle of the comp plan. So we need this comp plan to be consistent with an effective climate action plan. Even though it's imperfect, the SCATS model really should be used to assess the greenhouse gas emissions of this scenario. Otherwise, we can't compare the relative effectiveness of the previous 5 scenarios plus this scenario. And in terms of the previous scenarios, 350 Salem likes the scenarios C and D, some combination of those, which have more neighborhood hubs and more mixed use zones than in the proposed new vision. We would really like to know how this vision compares with C or D. Is it more stringent, more effective in reducing emissions, or less? And even if the SCATS model is imperfect, it would help us scale that comparison. And I have we have yet to hear a compelling reason why the final comp plan the adoption of this particular zoning map would need to be done before the end of the year. And I'd really like to, if there's a reason for that, I'd really like to hear that from staff today. So we urge the Planning Commission not to vote on this particular vision until there's more information, until the climate action process is done. And please don't even give a nod or say, well, this looks pretty good, or I'm pretty happy with this, or please don't do that. Please wait until all the information is in front of you and we have a full climate action plan analysis of all these measures that are in the Our Salem process, in the zoning map, and we assess other changes to this zoning map in the climate action plan then you can give your nods up or down or sideways. But we really think that the 2035 goal that the council has adopted of a 50% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions is fundamental. It is really should be a principle, should be the driving principle for everything the city does. The federal government has adopted this philosophy, and the state government has adopted this philosophy of climate action in every department and every activity, all pulling towards the one goal of saving the planet. We really appreciate the opportunity to comment. Again, thank staff and compliment them on their good work. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation. And just so you know, we are all aware that it is not an action item tonight. It is a presentation. We will have questions. We will have comments, but that's part of our interaction with staff on a presentation. But we will not be making a decision in any form tonight. Are there questions of Mr. Carver at this point? Commissioner Schweikart, followed by Commissioner Pollock. If you could use your raise your hand, I'm so much better at that. So Commissioner Schweikart.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Carver. I had to kind of briefly zip through the comments that you provided since I just got them today. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, you mentioned in the comment that the Land Conservation and Development Commission was working on major changes to their land use rules. Could you give a little bit of detail on that?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Early in the last year, the governor issued Executive Order 20-04. And what that order said was that every agency and state, or not every agency, about 12 or 13 agencies or commissions, of which the Land Conservation and Development Commission is one, needed to do everything they could possibly do under existing law to meet the goal of reducing emissions. And the state, she had some state goals, and I think it was pretty close to a 50% reduction from current levels. It was a 1990 base, but anyway, a very aggressive goal for the state agencies. And so all these state agencies, including LCDC and transportation and others, are actively engaged in rulemaking and changing their system transportation plans to try to reduce emissions. And so there's a rulemaking that's happening right now to change the way that the comprehensive plan amendment process works, with a much stronger emphasis on density and closer physical distances between jobs and shopping and where all the people live. And so that rulemaking will be done by the end of the year. And at that point, it'll be much clearer to the city council and to the planning staff and to the commission what flexibility they have. Right now, the city staff are operating under the existing rules, and that's totally understandable. But those rules will change by the end of the year, and there will be much more flexibility to densify, to have taller buildings, all kinds of stuff like that. And I know there are limitations about building height, and not everything is possible, but the LCDC rules will likely be much more flexible on those things.
Did you have a follow-up, Commissioner Schweikart, or are you good?
No, thank you. That's helpful information. Thanks.
Commissioner Pollock. Commissioner Pollock.
Hi, thank you for your comments. But so I see on the draft of goals and policies on the appendices and page 53, it does address reduce it says greenhouse gas emission goal, and it does say to 50% of citywide emission for 2006 by 2035 and be carbon neutral by 2050. Are you saying you want something better than that, or that's not the proper goal?
I want the plan that will get to that goal. There's no numerical analysis of this plan, how close it gets to that goal. And there's many other things that have to be done to get to that goal, but 50% of Salem's emissions are from transportation. And those are driven in part, I think in large part, by the zoning decisions, especially over a 15 or 30-year period. And so we want the plan to be part of a climate action, the the vision to be part of a climate action plan where the whole thing has a good chance of reaching those goals.
So these are goals and policies, but you're talking about actual operation stuff. And is that the right place to put it in the comprehensive plan?
Well, the comprehensive plan is just one element
Yeah.
of reaching those goals, but we take those goals very, very seriously. If the world does not reach those goals, the planet is toast.
No,
It is
I'm
really
not.
a serious problem.
I'm not talking about the goals. It's like you're talking about the actual plan on how to achieve the goals, and I'm saying, is the actual plan really supposed to be part of the comprehensive plan? I think that that's more of an operational issue rather than a goal and policy issue. That's
Well,
the thing that I'm confused about your statements.
If the zoning map encourages dispersed sprawl, and that sprawl happens between now and 2035, it is impossible to reach the goal.
Oh,
so
okay.
I do not want to have anything out there that makes it impossible for the city to reach its goals.
Okay, thank you. Now I understand.
Thank you for asking.
Any other questions of Mr. Carver? And I'm not seeing any hands raised. Thank you for your comments, Mr. Carver, and your time in front of us. And stay tuned. You can
Okay.
listen.
I will turn off my camera and phone and join you on the Zoom call.
Yeah, that'll
Thank
be
you.
great. You're
Bye-bye.
very welcome. Bye-bye. We'll move on to consent calendar. Commissioner Pollock, do you have a motion?
Yes. I move to adopt the minutes of January 2026 as they are presented to us.
Do I have a second? Raising a hand or saying. Commissioner Augustine is our second. Discussion on the motion. Any comments? Seeing no hands raised. Okay, Shelby, could you call the roll and please signify by saying aye if you're in favor of the motion.
Commissioner Augustine,
Aye.
Commissioner Griggs,
Aye.
Commissioner Heller,
Aye.
Commissioner Kopcho,
Aye.
Commissioner Levin,
Aye.
Commissioner McKinley,
Aye.
Commissioner Pollock,
Aye.
Commissioner Schweikart,
Aye.
and Commissioner Slater.
Aye.
Thank you, Shelby. Motion passed unanimously. No public hearings tonight. Yes. And moving on to item 6, special orders of business, our Salem discussion. Eunice, is it you? There you are. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm Eunice Kim, Long Range Planning Manager, City of Salem. With me tonight is Austin Ross, our Long Range Planner, and Julie Warnicki, our Transportation Planning Manager, and of course, Lisa. Can I share my screen? I'm just going to make sure. Okay. Can everyone see that? See my screen? Great. So I'm here tonight to give an update on the Our Salem project, specifically to give a presentation on the vision for growth and future growth and development. This is a major milestone in the project. It's the culmination of more than a year and a half of community engagement. Tonight we did present the draft vision to you in a work session in September, and so tonight I'll kind of highlight some of the areas that have changed since then based on community input, as well as the GHG reduction goal that Phil was just mentioning. We're not asking for a vote tonight, but we would love your input, your comments, your questions. So feel free to jump in when I'm done. So just as a reminder, the Our Salem project is a multi-year project to update our comprehensive plan. That is the large framework that really drives future growth and development in the community. It includes goals and policies, as well as a comprehensive plan map. And so I will talk about those today. As we know, Salem is growing, and we've seen a lot of development in recent years. And so this is really our opportunity to plan for that growth. This map shows the city outline, the city limits in black, and then the gray outline is our portion of the urban growth boundary. That is the portion that we're planning for. So when you hear people talking in the community about 60,000 more people by 2035, it is this gray area. So we kicked off the visioning project About a year and a half ago, in the fall of 2019, we've done scenarios, we've done a lot of outreach, and again, we presented the draft vision in the fall, and we are now at the revised vision. We've done a lot of outreach in the community over the last year and a half. We have done virtual meetings during the pandemic, Facebook Live events. In person, we did a lot of meetings as well. We went to over 160 meetings, virtual and in person, in the last year and a half. And we've engaged with more than 80 community groups. We know that we're not going to reach everyone in our portion of the urban growth boundary. So we've really relied heavily on those community groups to make sure that we're at least hearing the perspectives of across the community, whether it's communities of color, the business community, neighborhood associations, etc. So today, again, I'm going to present the vision. And the vision, I'm going to focus on the vision statement, the goals, and the proposed comprehensive plan map. And as a reminder, these are all really a high-level framework. So there's been a lot of discussion in the community and a lot of interest already about talking about detailed policies, our zoning map, and our zoning code. But we want to make sure that we really get that large framework correct before we move forward to those details. And so today I'm mostly going to focus on that larger framework. So here's our vision statement. It really represents shared priorities that we've heard in the community throughout this Our Salem project. And since the fall, we've made some updates. So for example, you'll see that we've changed the word sustainable community to carbon neutral based on the City Council's vote to adopt a GHG reduction goal of carbon neutral by 2050. We've also placed an emphasis on safe mobility choices, as well as families, and in addition to celebrating Salem's culture and diversity. So you'll see that it's been updated since the fall. I'm going to briefly go over some of the goals in the vision document. But again, as a reminder, the goals are very long-term, broad statements on kind of what we hope to achieve as a community. If this vision is accepted by council, then we will carry those goals forward into the actual comprehensive plan that we update. We will then work on the detailed policies to really support those goals and support the vision, but we haven't necessarily done that work yet. We've started compiling all the ideas that we've heard from the community, and you'll see those in Appendix A, but it's very much a draft, and we plan to do much more engagement on those policies. So again, today we're focused on the goals. So our goals cover a broad range of topics from community engagement to housing, economic development, transportation, the environment, really everything to do with the built environment, the impact on the natural environment are included in these goals. These are an example of our housing goals. You'll see that we have a goal around housing affordability, which remains a priority in the community. You'll see a goal on complete neighborhoods. This is really the idea that we've heard throughout our process in the community that people want to be able to live in areas where they can easily access goods and services and jobs and transit and parks and really be able to have that kind of complete neighborhood. One of the changes we have made since the fall was to add a land supply goal around housing. We had previously had a draft policy basically saying we should have enough land to accommodate our growth and our housing needs, but we have elevated that to a goal in this update to the vision. Land supply for housing is critical in terms of meeting our housing needs in the future, and we think based on community input and just understanding that it's a state requirement as well, we have elevated it to a goal. We have a pretty broad range of goals related to the environment, natural resources, and natural hazards. And the big update here is that we had a general GHG reduction goal in the past when we had the draft vision in the fall. And like was noted earlier, we have updated it to be specific to council's goal. So this is the council goal of reducing GHG by carbon neutral by 2050, essentially. So that would be a goal in the new vision. So I'm going to move on to the map. The proposed comprehensive plan map. If you remember throughout all of our vision, we did a lot of dot voting. Where do people want to see different types of development through different colors? And we've used all of that input to update the previous proposed comprehensive plan map. And I will walk through that tonight. Just as a reminder, the proposed comprehensive plan map is different than the zoning map. The zoning map is much more detailed and actually implements the comprehensive plan map. The comprehensive plan map is high level. So for example, if you see red on the map, that represents commercial. The zoning below that, underneath that, the zoning map could be commercial office, commercial retail, commercial general, very specific. But right now we're again kind of talking commercial at the comprehensive plan map level. So in the fall, we had 4 big ideas that were represented in the proposed comprehensive plan map. And those 4 ideas remain, but we have again made some tweaks, which I'll walk through. So the first idea is that we have heard throughout the community that people want to see multifamily housing distributed across the community. They don't want to see it concentrated in one neighborhood versus another. And they also want to see a diversity of housing types. And so we have tried to do that in this proposed comprehensive plan map. We also know, based on our housing needs analysis, we need much more land for multifamily housing. And so our proposed comprehensive plan map does indeed meet that need, our projected deficit of housing units for multifamily. We've made some adjustments since the fall because development proposals, right? Development has continued to happen as we've been working on this project. So some areas where we thought maybe could become multifamily housing in the future have been already kind of proposed for single family or approved for single family subdivisions, for example. So where we have lost some kind of land or potential land for multifamily housing, we have added some new land to make sure, again, we meet our housing needs. The second big idea is the idea of mixed use. We've continued to see support throughout the community for mixed use and more mixed use in Salem, particularly in the downtown area and along our major corridors that have frequent transit service. And so we have carried that forward from the draft vision to now, and we've added some more mixed use areas, particularly north of downtown heading towards Kaiser. So Kaiser has done some work recently to have a mixed use corridor, and our new mixed use would essentially link up with that area. Again, it's along with the core network. And I should step back and say, Chariot's core network is a network of bus routes where Chariot's has committed to having more frequent transit service. So if there's funding to ever add service, they would look there and they would not take away service there if they could help it. And any change to that network would really have to go through a public hearing service or a public hearing process. So it's pretty firm, and so we're planning around it. When we talk about mixed use, though, in Salem, we're really talking about flexibility. So we're not saying in these areas that are designated mixed use, you have to do a mixed use traditional development with retail on the ground floor and housing above. What we're saying is in these areas, you could do residential, you could do offices, you could do retail, or you could do it all together. And so you'll see that it's really meant to be a more flexible designation. Just for perspective, we've added about 1,700 acres of mixed use land with this proposal. Currently, we have about 500 acres. So we're increasing the amount of mixed use land in Salem quite substantially with this proposed comprehensive plan map. So the other big idea is this idea of neighborhood hubs that we've talked a lot about in the last year and a half. Just as a reminder, the neighborhood hub is kind of a new idea where you would have a small cluster of businesses within a residential neighborhood that could serve those residents. So if you think like a barber, a baker, a coffee shop, some place where you could kind of meet some of your daily needs without having to get in your car and drive somewhere. That's the idea of the neighborhood hub. Single family homes could continue to exist where we're designating a neighborhood hub, but it really opens up the opportunity for future business in those areas to serve the neighborhoods. Since the fall, we have tripled the number of neighborhood hubs, and I'll show a map here. So these are the ones that we had in the fall when we presented the draft vision, and then we've tripled the number from 11 to 33 different sites located across the community. We were really looking for areas that lacked services and shops, where we thought it was kind of a natural center in the neighborhood. We looked at places near parks or schools, places that had sidewalks, places that were near bus routes, places just kind of that made sense. We also took a lot of suggestions from the community as well. Last but not least, one of the other big ideas is really that folks really like where our industrial land currently is, and they want to maintain that and make sure that's protected. And they also want to see commercial uses allowed more broadly throughout the community. And so our proposed comprehensive plan map does that. It allows commercial kind of broadly throughout the community. And it also introduces this idea of live-work space. So we also tripled the amount of kind of live-work corridors that we had since compared to the fall. So if you think of the single family homes, for example, on Market Street today. Market Street is a major corridor, but it's very much lined in certain areas with single family homes. And so we've proposed live workspace in those areas. People who live in those homes could run a business out of their home. They don't have to, but the opportunity is there. It also allows for more services to be located closer to those neighborhoods. So like was mentioned earlier, we throughout this process have been analyzing our different proposals to see how they perform against different priorities in the community. And so in order to do that, we have created a preferred scenario. We have updated the preferred scenario based on the proposed comprehensive plan map in the vision tonight to see mostly how it performs against GHG, given that it's a priority in the community and we have set that goal by the council. Just wanted to say, though, that the preferred scenario is not exactly the same as a proposed comprehensive plan map. It's essentially guessing at what properties do we think might develop or redevelop under the proposed comprehensive plan map by 2035. So, for example, Lancaster right now, there's a long corridor where we are proposing to redesignate that to mixed use in the proposed comprehensive plan map. But in the preferred scenario, we are not assuming they all redevelop, right? We're assuming some of them may have infill, some of them may redevelop. And so it's not exactly the same, but it's meant to be a scenario that could occur under the preferred scenario, under the proposed comprehensive plan. So one of the things we looked at, because we knew it was a priority in the community, was how are we doing in terms of complete neighborhoods under this scenario? And so you'll see here that we're doing pretty well. We anticipate about 53% of our new housing by 2035 to be considered in a complete neighborhood. That's a neighborhood where you could easily get to parks, schools, grocery shop, transit, for example, and it's improvement over a current trend. So if you remember from the first phase of this project, we looked at what if we don't change anything and we keep our zoning, our comp plan map, everything the same, where do we think we would end up? And that's the current trends that you see on this graph. So under the current trends, only 31% of our new homes would be in a complete neighborhood, but under this proposed comprehensive plan map that we're presenting tonight, that would go up to 53. But focusing on GHG, we looked at, are we making a dent when it comes to GHG reductions related specifically to transportation? And unfortunately, we are not seeing a big shift. You'll see the current trends versus the preferred scenario. There's not a big difference. There is a decrease from today. There's about an 8 to 9% decrease in emissions from where we are today, but it's not 50%, for example. There's a lot of reasons for that. One is that the model that we're using is just not very sensitive to land use changes alone. Right now we have a pretty built out community. And so even though we're adding about 30,000 new housing units, it's only like a 25 to 30% increase in the amount of housing we already have on the ground. And so we're making an incremental addition of housing, and it's just not driving a big change in how people are traveling. Also, the model that we're using, which is the regional transportation model, it doesn't anticipate any improvements to transit, any improvements to the bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. And as we know from all of our discussions related to climate, it's going to take more than land use to get to carbon neutral by 2050. And last but not least, the model really looks at all vehicle trips. So not just trips of people driving around Salem, but people passing through I-5, people commuting in, people commuting out. And it's hard to influence those trips by land use alone. Despite that, we did try to look at what does it look for just internal trips. And we looked at that when it came to current trends. So again, we don't change the comp plan map at all. We don't change zoning versus the proposed comprehensive plan map in the preferred scenario. We do see a little bit of a decrease. It's about 4.5% in emissions. And we're working on getting the today number. So I apologize that we don't have that now. We're hopefully going to get that. So it's a little bit, there's a little bit of an improvement in terms of internal trips. We have a little bit more control in terms of the land use, it seems like, influencing those trips. But we know it's not enough. And so one of the things that we are planning to do and we'll present tonight is look at what can we do beyond the comprehensive plan map? What can we do at that more detailed zoning code, zoning map level that a lot of folks have talked about in the community? And so what we plan to do is present 6 ideas to you and to the council and say, are these ideas that you think when we get past the comprehensive plan map, past the vision, to the more detailed zoning code, zoning map, that you want us to pursue and to explore? So I'll quickly run through those. And if you want to dive into any of them later, I'm happy to do that. So these are 6 ideas that are pretty broad right now. We would obviously do some community engagement, really try to figure out what these exactly should look like, but I'll walk through kind of the broad ideas right now. The first idea is to increase maximum heights in our mixed use zones, particularly along the core network. So if you think of like Lancaster or Commercial, we have maximum heights today. In a lot of places, that's maybe 50 feet. Perhaps we could bump that up to like 65, for example. The second idea is to eliminate parking requirements for all uses along the core network. Council, I think a year and a half ago, or maybe it was just last year, eliminated parking requirements for multifamily housing along the core network. And number 2 would take it a step further, maybe to all uses, maybe to some uses, maybe to mixed use, but just kind of taking that parking requirement elimination further. That would create more space, right, to actually develop that land to a higher density and would allow the market to really set that parking. And the third option is increasing the minimum density, either along the core network or throughout Salem in some of our zones. Right now, we do see people developing at a higher density than our minimum density, but we could actually try to set that minimum density, which would kind of push the amount of housing that we would get in specific zones or specific locations. Again, these are broad ideas. We would set the thresholds and do all the work to make sure that we're presenting something that works for Salem. But these are kind of the broad ideas. The fourth idea is to actually require multifamily housing in mixed use zones in specific locations, potentially throughout mixed use zones. That's all kind of have to be determined through some outreach. But right now, as I talked about earlier, our mixed use zones are very flexible. They're meant to allow for housing, allow for retail, right, or allow it together. But if we wanted to really make sure we were getting housing in our mixed use zones, we could actually require it to some degree. Number 5 is requiring neighborhood hubs or middle housing in large subdivisions. So this really gets at, we do have land on the edges that is still single family zoned. And so it's allowed to develop into single family homes in the future. And so in order to make sure that some of those new bigger developments are really has the opportunity to be more complete, we could require a neighborhood hub. As a reminder, the neighborhood hub zone allows for single family housing, but also just allows for future businesses. So this would be kind of a new idea in Salem, but would help get to that kind of walkable neighborhoods out in the outer areas as the land developed. And last but not least, the 6th idea is to establish a minimum density in the single family zones near the core network. So today, we don't have a minimum density in our single family zone. If you have 4,000 square feet, you can do a single family home. But in the future, when we implement House Bill 2001, by right, people will be able to do more housing, duplex, triplex, fourplex, based on the size of their lot. Again, it would be voluntary, right? You could, but you wouldn't have to. You could still have a single family home on a large lot. If we were to set a minimum density, it would actually maybe force a duplex, triplex, or a fourplex on those larger lots, which would again get more density along the core network. So I'm happy to answer questions if there are some, but those are kind of our big ideas that we're going to present to you and then present to council to see, should we explore these as we get into the details. This is a map just of the core network. It's the gray, so you'll see it along Commercial, Liberty, going up north, Portland Road, Lancaster, State Street, etc. So in addition to our work, obviously the climate action plan work is continuing. And so we do anticipate there being recommendations out of the climate action plan that are related to code. So maybe there's requirements for EV, electric vehicle charging, maybe solar ready homes, things like that, that we could put in the code. And we will do that, but we're gonna wait on the climate action plan to see what those strategies are. We really were focusing those zoning options on land use. So our next step after tonight is to go to City Council on February 22nd and ask for acceptance. We're not asking for adoption. We just want to make sure, are we headed in the right direction? Can we continue working on those details using this vision as the framework. And so we will be doing that on the 22nd. If we get that acceptance, we'll then start working on those detailed policies, the detailed zoning code, zoning map, and hopefully bring all of that together through the adoption process by the end of this year. Sorry, I keep forgetting it's 2021. And that's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, thank you, Eunice. Commissioner Pollock has raised her hand.
Okay, I have a couple of questions and other stuff. So I'm just going to ask my first question and then let everybody else talk. And then at the end, I'm going to come and ask some other stuff. So the first thing that I wanted to ask, and you kind of brought it up, is I took a really good close look at the appendices because, I mean, these larger goals, if I could see the details in the policies and the goals, it kind of helps me understand the rather broader goals. But on page 45, you do talk about middle housing, and I'm sorry, but I don't know can you explain to me what that is? Because I don't know what that is.
Yes, I apologize for that. So middle housing is really like a townhouse, duplex, triplex, fourplex, cottage cluster. It's actually defined in House Bill 2001. That's the housing that we're going to have to allow in our single family homes.
Okay, because that thing on page 45 that talks about that, it says middle housing and then it says townhouse.
Yes.
So that's why I was kind of confused. So anyway, and the other ones I'm going to wait until after everybody else talks.
Thank you, Commissioner Pollock. Commissioner Kopcho.
Sure, I have a lot of things, but I'll save them. You did say that you want to focus on not code necessarily in this conversation, and since we're not voting anyway, I think that's wholly appropriate because I have a lot of thoughts on potential code options. From a zoning perspective, I think the 6 goals make sense to me. As far as looking at minimum densities, I mean, that's something that I look at, whether it's 4 residents or 9 or 18 or whatever the number may be, depending on the type of housing in the area. But one thing that I didn't see on there is, and maybe it's a code thing, but setbacks. So whether if it's within the core network or wherever we could, potentially do it or explore doing it, is just the elimination of side interior setbacks in certain areas, reduction of other setbacks where appropriate, and it's not going to impact utility or anything else like that. But that's something that I've seen in a lot of other cities that are working to make it more accessible and more conducive for trying to put in more townhome style stuff, more mixed use and things like that. So if we get that done, then we don't have to do variances each time that we have something that we're trying to fit into, we're trying to put the square peg in the round hole kind of thing. So I would be interested in seeing that as well. So that's, I guess, all I have for now.
Did you have anything you wanted to say to that, Eunice?
Yeah, I was just going to say we would look at everything from like setbacks to lot coverage and things that kind of correspond to that. And when we created the mixed use 1 and 2 zones, we had a lot of conversation around setbacks and lot coverage and making it so that people could really fully develop their sites while also understanding any impacts on like neighboring residential areas. That was really the big conversation in terms of that. Yeah.
Great. One other thing, if I may.
Follow up? Yep.
Minor. I did see the very first point on increasing height, but without the name of what potential zone that might fall in, which is something that we've talked about a number of times. So I mostly bring it up tongue in cheek, but high rise, as it were. So whether or not that's something that gets renamed.
Yes, that is the plan, to rename.
The high ground.
Yes.
Let's go to Commissioner Schweikart, and then I'll go back to you, Commissioner Pollock.
Thank you. Eunice, can you bring up your presentation and back to like the next steps that you mentioned briefly at the end there? Okay, one more. Well, I guess that's either one is fine. The idea of the vision acceptance. So when you say that you're trying to, or we're asking the city council to let us know if that the direction that we've gone in is that they consider that to be the right direction. So I guess just wanted to make sure I understand that. So that means that what's been drafted in the materials that you've presented, that we're asking them to say that these materials with regards to the guiding principles and with regards to the kind of the categorization process that we've gone through to identify the focus areas, that those are all kind of the universe of what we want to be including in this process. And is that a correct understanding of what vision acceptance means?
Yeah, yes-ish. So,
Okay.
I mean, we do want the vision to be kind of the overarching framework and guidance for all the detailed work, but we're specifically looking at the vision statement, the goals, and the map, because the policies we want to make sure support the goals. And so, like, did we get the goals right? So we don't want to do all this policy work and then the goals are all wrong. Same thing with the proposed comprehensive plan map. We don't want to work on all the zoning and the zoning code if council comes back and says, actually, we want more, I don't know, some use in a completely different area. We do anticipate there'll be changes to the map because development is still happening, right? And so we can't lock these things in until we actually go through an adoption process. And, you know, like I mentioned before, like we're already losing potential land and having to kind of make up for it when it comes to multifamily. So I see some, you know, changes, but we're saying like big picture. Is this where we want mixed use? Are we okay with multifamily here? Is this generally where we want to see hubs, et cetera?
And then on the next slide, where you go forward into the future. So can you remind me what's driving our timeline
for adoption? A lot of things. We really are trying to get a framework in that actually represents the priorities of the community. We've heard pretty clearly that there's a lot of new goals and new ideas, like new locations for mixed use, for example, that the community wants that we don't have today, for example. And particularly when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions, we've been working really closely, obviously, with the Climate Action Plan, but also with the state on that rulemaking that was mentioned earlier. Lisa's working on that. Julie's on that committee. And we just talked to them today, for example, about kind of what is their timeline for moving forward. They may not have any new rules actually adopted till over a year from now. And then there'd be a long time for adoption for cities to actually make those changes. And so it could be like years before those are actually formalized in the city. And so, you know, what the state has said and what I think the community thinks is like, there are things we can do now to help meet, right, those climate goals, complete neighborhoods, all the things that are access to transit, all these things that are important to the community. And so we're really trying to like, we've heard it, we've done it, and just move it along. If there needs to be changes and improvements based on state rulemaking or anything else, we can make those changes. But we really feel like where we are now in terms of the current comp plan and goals aren't necessarily reflective in getting us towards those priorities in the community.
Any follow-up, Commissioner Schleicher?
Well, I guess, I mean, I made notes on some of these pages as to like things that I was like, oh, can we include this? What about this? So I don't know if this is the right format to provide those to you, or if you'd rather, I mean, I don't know if there are like necessarily points of discussion for the commission rather
You can
than
always
this.
email them to me.
Okay. I guess I'll just say kind of as a broader point that I would love it if in the language in which we're describing our guiding principles and then explaining our focus areas, if we could include language that talks about how each of these efforts is furthering controlling and reducing climate emissions. I think that that would be great in terms of the way that we're talking about each of these focus areas. You know, whether it be like in the land use and urbanization section, talking about intensification of uses and how that benefits the reduction in GHGs. Also in the housing section, I know that there's like a sort of some wording that's getting to unsheltered residents, but I really think it would be beneficial, and I think it aligns with where we are as a community to come out more strongly about ending homelessness, and putting that language very clearly in the housing section. So I'll just say those because maybe other people have thoughts about that kind of language, but I would love to see those things included.
Thank you, Commissioner Schweikart. Commissioner Slater, followed by Commissioner. No, I think I said I was going to Commissioner Pollock first. Commissioner Pollock and
Well,
Slater.
You can do Commissioner Slater.
Okay. Commissioner Slater.
I talked once already.
All right. Thank you. I generally agree with the thrust of the vision and the principles. I think Commissioner Schweikart makes some very good points about how we can refine and improve those. My focus has been a little bit more on what it takes to make this successful in terms, are the policies that we're putting in place or will be putting in place, are they going to achieve the results that we hope to achieve? And Eunice, we talked just the other day about some of the stats, and I wanted to get those in the record if I could, so we're all have the same set of information. So to that, let me say, if you can provide us again with the percentage of new residents and jobs that are expected to be in the core network and then in complete neighborhoods, and then also the total percentage of all families and all jobs that will be in those two categories.
You want me to show the complete neighborhood slide again?
Yeah, if you could, and yes, if you want to bring that up, the complete neighborhood.
Okay.
And then let me ask a question about that.
Is it working?
Okay, right. So are those, so this is complete neighborhood. So 74% of all households will live in what you're describing as complete neighborhoods,
Mm-hmm.
and 53% of new households. And I think you have that information for jobs as well.
Well, we had information on access to frequent transit, 15-minute service for jobs, and I can look at that while we talk. I can look for that. That's not in this presentation.
And do you have those figures for the core network?
No, our indicator from this project has been access to frequent transit, and it is for new housing and new employment. So under the preferred scenario, it shows that 22% of new housing would be within a quarter mile of 15-minute service stops, 15 minute service, and 36% of new employment. We don't have it for all, just for new.
Okay. What percentage of all households will be in walkable neighborhoods by 2035 under the current scenario?
Let me go back to that. Complete neighborhoods is 74%.
Okay. And to follow up, a lot of literature around like urban design and urban planning related to greenhouse gas emissions talks about compact neighborhoods and mixed use neighborhoods, but we're talking about complete neighborhoods. Can you help me understand what the difference is? Because it seems to me those might be two different things.
Sure. So complete neighborhoods, we're talking about kind of the mix of uses where people live and how they can access them. So it's kind of a walkable neighborhood essentially. Compact tends to get to the mix of those types of housing units. So, duplex, triplex, fourplex in a single family neighborhood would be more compact than all single family homes on large lots. Compact neighborhoods, I think we're going to get to that through House Bill 2001 anyway, where we're going to have to require or that we're required to actually allow a broader mix of those compact housing types in the single family zone. Compact neighborhoods also have obviously are related to complete neighborhoods where there is access, right? So there's access to services, shops, etc. So they're not dissimilar. It's just that one is, I think, getting more at different types of housing types.
Okay, I have 2 more questions if I could.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. So the state transportation strategy plan discusses the need to get 30% of a metro area's residents into compact neighborhoods. Is this plan going to get us to that 30%?
It's a good question. We have looked at, I mean, one of the reasons we are trying to get to those zoning options that I talked about, those 6 options, is that we think we need to do more. So instead of just saying there's mixed use along the corridors, we need to actually do more to incentivize housing at a certain density in those areas, for example. So I think with the more detailed zoning code, zoning map work, we would move toward that. But I can't say that today that we're there.
So just to follow up, so absent some of the additional policies that you're proposing, the zoning map alone is not going to get us to that 30% compact neighborhood goal that the state has.
I don't, hard for me to say yes to that.
Okay.
We haven't done that analysis, right? Exactly how do they define it versus our kind of complete neighborhoods, our mixed use areas, our access to transit, et cetera. So hard to say.
Okay.
I do think though that, you know, doing more at the zoning code level, we could incentivize and actually move closer to that. And we've talked about setting benchmarks toward that end, looking at the Oregon's transportation strategy about, you know, as 30% of all households in metropolitan areas need to be in these kind of walkable, mixed use, compact neighborhoods, right? It does refer to mixed use as well. And because it's looking at all housing, I think to get to 30%, we would actually have to do more to get more new housing, right? So we have more control over where the new housing goes. And so we have existing benchmarks. They're kind of out of date. They're based on old transit networks, old transit stops. And so as part of this project, we are going to set new benchmarks. And those benchmarks could be obviously aligned with that strategy, that statewide strategy.
Thank you. And I'm sorry if I put you on the spot with that one.
That's okay. That's okay.
So Eunice, I had a question before we get to Commissioner Pollack. I haven't read that House Bill 2001 in great detail at all, but my take is that it is more along the lines of you may develop, you know, duplexes, triplexes, and single family housing. You may do this and you may do that. It doesn't sound like the 6, or at least a couple of the 6 new ideas are really along those lines. They're much stronger. So, and I don't see requiring something as an incentive. It's a mandate. It's not an incentive. And I think that, you know, I would have some concerns about mandating certain things, like requiring the multifamily housing and mixed use zones, and requiring a certain level of density in a single family. Although I know that the outcome is great, but we would be, as a city, be taking a much stronger stance than the state. And so I would be interested to know, have other cities attempted to do that heavy-handed approach to reaching our goals? And that's just food for thought. You don't necessarily need to respond, but that was just my take on the 2 approaches.
So we have done some research in other cities to see kind of what have they done. And some places do actually require housing in their mixed use areas. Some places have eliminated parking requirements along frequent transit.
I don't have a problem with that one.
You know, and a lot of communities have minimum densities in all their residential zones. So it would be new to Salem. And you're right, some of them are carrots, some of them are sticks. And so we're just trying to see, you know, where is the appetite, I guess, in the community and the council and you all to move towards exploring those as options, and then seeing what is the right threshold, locations, etc.
Got it. I appreciate that. Commissioner Pollock, your
Thank
hand
you.
has been raised.
Okay, so the second question is on page 40, when we talk about affordable housing, you talk about low and working households. So my question is, are you going to use a standard criteria to determine what that is? Because in the not so distant past, we kind of took one thing and kind of changed the qualification criteria. So how would you determine that?
Well, I think that policy language is not meant to be it's meant to be all inclusive in terms of more affordable types of housing. In the code, we've generally leaned on, I think, 80% of area median income. And so the policy language would, I think the one you're referring to is incentivizing or encouraging more of that type of housing. And so
Right.
we wouldn't say that we just want to encourage housing that's at 60% or just at 80 or just at 120. I think we need that broad mix in Salem.
Okay. And then as a matter of curiosity, on page 63, it talks about, and I don't want to get our greenhouse gas guy upset or anything, but it talks about if you were to expand the UGP for residential development, that you have first priority is to a 1982 land. Is there some kind of historical agreement that you have to do that? And where is that? And where exactly is that land?
That's in our current comprehensive plan language, and Lisa might have the background.
Sure,
Thank
I
you.
can address that. Hi. Yeah, and when we first adopted our urban growth boundary, it was appealed. We had a really big one in the late 70s, and it was appealed. And actually, we lost in court, and it kind of shrunk to its current, boundary, which was clearly, obviously, very big. 1982, and we still have plenty of land. And so they took out, certain areas. That's how we have that area in West Salem that's inside the city limits, but outside the UGB, that poor property. So there's some other properties that were identified, that were for a bit inside the UGB. When they shrunk, the council at that time put it in the comp plan because they wanted that land, and some of those property owners wanted to be inside the UGB and they couldn't because of that court case. So they kind of made their own policy that, well, next time we expand, we're going to, go to those people first. It's not necessarily binding under state law because there's a lot of criterion that we would have to meet for picking land if we were going to expand the UGB. It doesn't necessarily mean that those properties would meet today's thresholds that are required under state law, but we would internally look at those properties and do that analysis on those. So it does have a historic kind of context to it.
Yeah, and it does say just for residential development. It doesn't say for like anything else like transportation and stuff like that. Correct?
Right. I believe they were all intended at that time for residential properties.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the other thing is, I want to say that I really like the fact that in your economic development section on 48 and page 49 is that your the issues of that you really talked about the design goals and the process and all this regarding housing it's almost like what Commissioner Swigart was trying to get to, where if we're going to do something in the housing section, say the ultimate goal is to achieve greenhouse gases. I really like the fact that in the economic situation, you put in the issues of housing and things about how that correlates to the expansion and the health and the efficiency and the welfare of the economic situation. So I mean, it's like it's not just economic and housing, they're correlated, especially if you're going to do neighborhood hubs, which of course, I'm so excited about. That's really, really wonderful. Or those little business centers that you're talking about. So I just wanted to compliment you on, even though we're not really we're supposed to be addressing the big issues. I really like the way that you felt you put that in. So I mean, food for thought. The way you did that is maybe what Commissioner Swikart was kind of talking about, that maybe you want to correlate the greenhouse gases into your housing and land use and all that other stuff as well. So I really like the whole issue. Now, the only last thing I want to say is regarding the greenhouse gases and transportation. You know, what I saw, when I reviewed all this, it's 2/3 of this comes from the commuter traffic, and that's not something that we can. And so the issues for that is that okay, do we have a lot of people coming in because we don't have enough affordable housing? Or is it because they prefer to live in a rural area or in a Portland and everything, and they just want to come and work here, but they don't want to stay here? And so for behavioral, it's very difficult to try to, if 2/3 of our missions come from transportation, and the most of it comes from transportation, and 2/3 of that are commuter, and that's a behavioral issue. Again, maybe there's other programs like rideshare and incentives that the cities can push to the local businesses to kind of help to deal with the commuter stuff. Like when we look at the Salem Hospital being one of the larger, of course, not right now, but the education, being a larger employer, that maybe there's some incentives that there can be put in there to promote kind of like rideshare, or you know, maybe even working with transit for like I know, like like the bus they have going to the Indian casino and things like that. So they're all on a bus and stuff like that. So I'm just saying that there's not a lot in here that's dealing with the commuter people, and that's a big greenhouse gas issue.
Yeah, that's a large discussion in the climate action plan.
Yeah,
task
right.
force.
But I
Yeah.
just wanted to put it out there.
Thank you, Commissioner Pollock. Did you have any other questions that you wanted to ask?
No, not me. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Kopcho.
Yes, great, thank you. Yeah, so on that last point, regarding the commuters, Josh, you're not muted, so just in case
Oh.
you think you are, I don't want you chomping down on something unsuspectingly. But I was just going to say, you know, this isn't necessarily a forum for transportation, but at the same time, over the last 50 years or so, we've developed a city that promotes and rewards single occupancy vehicle ownership to do everything. And hopefully through the end of this process, decades from now, we have a city that rewards bike ped. And one of the greatest economic indicators, I think, is number of people outside of their cars doing things in the downtown area. So Mike Slater is also not okay. Anyway, so what I wanted to say though, Eunice, if I could we talk about some of the policies that are in the transportation and land use? It's in the appendices, I think. Is that something we could talk about now, or is there a different time maybe during this discussion?
Happy to talk about it. I should say they're very draft. I don't know if I stressed that. They're very
okay.
draft.
Well, since they're very draft, let's just talk about one of them in particular.
Okay.
So when I looked at them, I thought, I thought they're draft and fine, but rail compatibility, I don't, Salem is not dense enough to have like a high-speed rail, throughout the city, like a subway or anything like that. But thinking through vision and thinking through 20 or 30 years from now, I think it would be, I think there's room where we might use the lens of economic development and how Salem could be an attractive, sustainable regional destination for jobs and arts and entertainment through rail compatibility for not just industrial and freight, but that whole, the area around, I think it's Bellevue to Mission, 12th and 13th, 40% of that right now is parking lots. And that's, the RAM is over there and some other things. And if that were visioned in a mixed use kind of format where you have the university and you have, other multimodal transit right there available, thinking through rail compatibility just from a different kind of economic development perspective, I think would be both attractive to developers. You'd have people that want to live, maybe if it's mixed use and there's new housing there for the university or whatever. I mean, it would be a really cool kind of concept. So it's just something that as I was looking through the policies and looking through all of the different layers to the vision, it popped to me that maybe want to consider that too. So just food for thought, I think, really. President Griggs, you are muted.
Now, I've heard that line every meeting I'm in. But thank you for the reminder, Commissioner Kopcho. Commissioner Slater, you have your hand raised.
Thank you. I wanted to follow up on Commissioner Kopcho's comments about streets and transportation, because that is one of the things that I am most concerned about with the proposed comprehensive plan, because it relies so heavily on moving people from vehicles to foot, bike, and mass transit. So I was really hoping to get a sense from perhaps Lisa here, to what extent are kind of our capital improvement plans, to what extent are street improvement plans driven by planning policies in the comprehensive plan? Is there, are those well aligned together? Can we have some confidence that when we have a comprehensive plan that transportation improvements are going to follow that plan?
Well, transportation improvements today are identified in our transportation system plan, but it has a lot of projects, right? A huge gamut. And so that is part of the comp plan. But our hope is that when we're done with this project, we bring it forward. One, there's going to be TSP amendments, which will be the next step to really refine those. But that there will be some sort of prioritization of projects that come out of the TSP, that help further the vision that the council, will hopefully be adopting by the end of this year. So it's not there yet, but that is our goal, is to get those things to all work together, because that's integral to making sure that this vision is a success.
And then the funding follows, right?
Yeah, and ideally the funding would, which projects are brought to the top for funding would be prioritized to further, promote the vision and the goals that the council is adopting.
If I can follow up, then do you or does the planning department staff have any role in making decisions related to road improvements, or what gets ranked how in the capital improvement project system?
No, Public Works does the CIP.
Ms. Warnicki is right there.
Hi, Julie Warnicki, Transportation Planning Manager. I just wanted to put out there that Planning Department staff does participate on the Salem Kaiser Area Transportation Study Technical Advisory Committee, and that is the group that helps determine how our regional transportation funds get allocated to projects. And anyway, just wanted to put that out there, and we always collaborate across departments as well.
Thank you, Julie. Commissioner Schweikart.
Okay, two things. I could not help. First thing, I could not help but hear in Commissioner Kopcho's statements about rail compatibility that we're talking about a mixed use 12th and 13th Street corridor. So I'm just going to plug one more time for everyone in the cheap seats that I think that needs to be changed in our future map. And I know that it is a issue that is rife with strong opinions, but I will go ahead and say that I agree that if we're talking about a way to utilize transportation mechanisms as an economic engine and how that also relates with land use, then, really capitalizing on specific geographic locations within our city in which that could happen, that we could utilize that opportunity. 12th Street, 13th Street corridor is one of those. So
That's a great pun. Economic. That was
there you go.
And what's your second point?
Second point. All right. Because folks got into economic development, I did want to make a comment about where I thought we were lacking in a goal within that category. And that's really looking at economic development through a diversity lens. I don't think we're really talking about how we can nurture and promote small and minority-owned businesses through the creation of space that allows those kinds of businesses to thrive. And I'm not going to say that I am in any way an expert on land, how code can provide opportunity for allowing small minority-owned businesses to thrive, but I thought that it was worth putting out there that it just felt like that was maybe a missing component to the economic development category. So that's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Schweikart. Other comments or questions for Eunice or Lisa? Commissioner Slater.
Once again, yes, thank you.
Welcome back.
So since Julie spoke, I thought then I would direct a question to Julie if I could.
She'd love it.
Right. So Julie, I'm very interested in how, if you could explain to me how your work and Public Works Department takes into account the planning decisions and the comprehensive map as you go about determining how to implement your work. I mean, particularly what I'm concerned about, frankly, is that a lot of the success of this updated plan is calling for the improvement of kind of our pedestrian network so that we have, streets, sidewalks, bikeways, street trees and things that are going to get people out of their car and onto the streets. And I'm trying to understand to what extent Public Works understands that and sees the direction that is coming towards you.
I would say that Public Works is fully supportive of the, increased densities and a strong bicycle pedestrian network that supports people walking and biking to destinations. I think that is currently reflected in our adopted plans. However, I think that can definitely be expanded upon, and that's something that we intend to do following on the adoption of the goals, the comprehensive policies plan goals. We would want to work with the community to see where we needed to maybe refine some of our goals and policies. And then that also plays into development requirements, which of course, are tied to what a development has to do. Unfortunately, we do not have a robust, or we barely have any funding stream for constructing new pedestrian bicycle networks in the city, other than going after limited federal funds through our Metropolitan Planning Organization, going after some limited grant opportunities, and then we have a very small piece in our for pedestrian crossing improvements that have been included in the capital improvement plan. Other than that, we are really tied to bond measures, and we have not had a transportation bond since 2008, and so we don't have a lot of places, I guess, to look. We do anticipate through the state transportation planning rule amendments that both Lisa and I are participating on that statewide rulemaking advisory committee. We anticipate that the state is going to require that transportation plans like ours become financially constrained. That is not currently a requirement. And so I believe that will lead to some more robust discussions in terms of prioritizing transportation improvements in our plans in the coming years.
Thank you.
Did you have a follow-up, Commissioner Slater?
No, not right now. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions of staff at this time? Commissioner Pollock? Can't hear you.
What does that mean, constrained? Julie? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear. I don't understand your question, however.
You said that the transportation plan has, that they're saying that there
Oh.
talks about being financially constrained. What does that
What
mean?
what that means is that right now, the Salem Transportation System Plan, when it was developed, really looked at all of our needs and, not tried to identify all of our needs that we need to fully build out our transportation network for all modes of transportation. That costs more money than we are reasonably likely to have in a 20-year time frame.
Okay.
And so the new rules are expected to require that we show, that if we put $200 million, $500 million worth of transportation projects, if we identify them, we have to show how we can reasonably anticipate those being funded by our community. And doesn't mean we have to have the money in the bank. Of course, they're still writing these rules, but that's typically how financial constraint is defined in Oregon.
Balance sheet, so basically
Sort of a
balance.
balance sheet, so that it forces a prioritization, because in all honesty, we do not, as a community, do not have the capacity to do everything that everybody wants to serve all modes of transportation. And so there will have to be choices. And I believe that those choices will be informed by the comprehensive policies plan direction. There's always trade-offs. So.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions of staff? I think we are good, Eunice and Julie, on that topic. Thank you. Okay, I believe Commissioner Slater had a little bit of time that he wanted on the agenda. Commissioner Slater, you've got the floor.
Thank you. My hope was at the end of this meeting, we would be in a position, or the commission would be in a position, to provide some input into the deliberations of the city council meeting, particularly whether or not we as the commission felt that the comprehensive plan was going in the right direction, or if we had any advice to give to the city council. I'm not sure to what extent we're all on the same page with the current plan. I had some questions about my concerns. I heard from a couple of my colleagues what some of their thoughts were, but as to where we are as a whole, I'm just not sure. I generally think that this is going in the right direction. I'm quite concerned about the city's ability to deliver on a street, a pedestrian network that will make this successful. I am worried that as we create more multi-use communities, as we increase density, which I know we need to, and if we don't have the street network in place, it's going to move people from cars. We're going to wind up with congestion, which is the feature that people hate most about urban environment. And it would be awful if we all get on board with creating, denser, compact neighborhoods in the hopes of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and instead we wind up with congestion. The other thing I'm worried about is that we're gonna come into this with some vague ideas about where people are going to develop, but it isn't actually going to fit with what we know is going to work, which is why I brought up that 30% number that the state has identified. So for me, I would like to see this plan deal with those two issues directly, or at least like to make the city council aware of the fact that those are two issues. But again, I'm not sure where other people are on the commission, and I'd love to hear from other people on what their reactions are to the current plan.
And we can do that, Commissioner Slater, and you know you've always got that ability to share your thoughts representing yourself too at City Council when they're addressing this issue. I mean, I think that's just a given. But any other comments? Anybody want to give some feedback to Commissioner Slater at this time? I just feel like I agree with you, Commissioner Slater, that it's pretty early on, and I don't know that I know that city staff is not asking us for that position at this time. It may be later down when it's a little bit more fully baked that they come back to us for that. But as far as his draft vision and these 6 new ideas, I don't think that the expectation is for us to take an action, but we can discuss it now. Or I'm looking around. Commissioner Pollock.
So given the gentleman that spoke to us earlier on, and he's okay, let's go to on what Commissioner Slater said first. Given what Julie Warnicki stated about there's things coming down the pipeline about balancing, like you can't put something in your plan if it's not financially feasible or possible to do. And that's kind of along with Commissioner Slater's statement that, yeah, what's really feasible. So, I mean, if we put this pie in the sky kind of goals, but it's really not feasible, it's not going to really achieve what we want to achieve in this new thing. But I don't also, on the other hand, if we don't try to go for the pie in the sky and we say, well, it's not feasible and it's this, I mean, when's the next time we're going to do this comprehensive plan? So I know it may not be feasible, but I think I like to keep it so very, very broad. And then if in reality it's a little less, but at least with the broadness, it's a goal that we can achieve, maybe try to achieve larger. You know what I'm trying to say is that I don't want to curtail any possibility and then we don't achieve what could possibly be beyond what the state thinks it likely to be. And the other thing is that this affordable housing, I think a lot of the key to this too is the affordable housing issue, and all that comes down to is incentive and financing. You know, again, it looks really good in the paper, and in that section of that housing, it does talk about homelessness and things like that, and it says that the public agencies should work with private sectors and things like this, and I know we've had a couple of projects in the past, but you know, and it takes a big developer, you know, to come in and do an affordable housing. It's not really, you know, again, Commissioner Sweikart could go to this, how really feasible it is for just, you know, an average developer to come in and say, I would like to do affordable housing, but, you know, where are the realities? Is the city really ready to take on that project with me? So I'm just saying, it's like, it's damn if you do, damn you don't. Yeah, is it feasible? Should we be a little more a little bit more reality? But then again, if we don't shoot for the stars, are we kind of killing ourselves here? That's why I don't want to kind of give anything limiting to the city council, because I'm afraid of that.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Pollock. Commissioner Kopcho, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, so I was thinking through what Commissioner Slater said, and I generally agree with his remarks. So since he was looking for how his other, fellow commissioners felt, I feel the same in that it seems like it's moving in the right direction. I didn't see anything that made me go, oh, wow, I can't, that maybe shouldn't be there. Or that's not gonna help. But it seems a little too early to say how to all pan out unless we can, see how it works operationally. And then thinking through how, what Commissioner Pollock was just saying, when we started this journey of our Salem, and when Eunice, I think really, who's done a lot of the work, started it, and what feels like several lifetimes ago at this point, so much has changed and shifted in the landscape economically, from a climate perspective, in terms of government and government capability. And so I think that taking into consideration, not wanting to shoot for the stars, I think of what Vancouver, BC did when they put out one of their plans a few years ago, and they decided our plan is going to be, we will be the greenest city in Canada, I think they said. And so that's a pretty lofty goal, right? And they just put it out there, and that's going to be our goal, and we're going to get there. And to Commissioner Slater's point, can they get there? Could we get there if we said we're going to be the greenest city in Oregon and that's going to be our guiding vision for our Salem? I have no idea. Probably not, right? But if you don't set the bar high, then you don't know how far you can go. And so I think that I fully support making sure that we try to push the limit with this while we have it at our fingertips, instead of doing what we think is politically feasible and then 25 years looking back at this and going, wow, we really maybe should have pushed the envelope a little more.
Thank you. Other comments? Commissioner Schweikart.
Yeah, I would just echo Commissioner Kopcho's comments in that I think that the purpose of, in my mind, I'll just say in my personal opinion, the purpose of a document such as this that has been given to us with vision and guiding principles is to aim high, is to be idealistic about the potential, right? Because we want to be able to say, like, how do we fulfill the greatest potential as possible? So I would say that it is I think that this is a moment that we should try to be bold in what we hope to achieve with this comprehensive plan. And so I guess the comments that I was making with regards to specific categories were, I think, probably overall intended to push us to be more bold, and thinking, shooting for, what the ideal would be. And obviously the city council will tell us if what we think is the ideal aligns with what they think is the ideal. So if we wanted to provide some feedback to them about that, they can certainly disagree with us. But I would say that I think the changes that have occurred since this process started, particularly with regards to the makeup of our council, I think is advantageous for thinking boldly and creating a more bold vision for the future. And so I would say that I would agree that if there's nothing that again, echoing Commissioner Kopcho's statements, there's nothing in here that I'm saying that I look at and I say, this is absolutely like a red flag, like warning, I disagree strongly and I need to go make a big statement at city council. I think that I would want to go further on a couple of these points. And so that's I guess where I'm at.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Schweikart. Commissioner Heller. You're on mute, Lisa.
Am I all right now?
You're good now. You're perfect.
Good. Thank you. I also want to throw my hat in with the more bold vision. I agree with the sentiment that if we don't aim high, we may not make it, but at least we won't undercut ourselves. So I support Commissioner Slater's and the other commissioners' opinions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments to Commissioner Slater? And I agree with my colleagues on the vision statement. I think if your vision statement isn't lofty and it isn't a stretch, then it's really not an adequate. It's less than adequate. But I think there's some components there that City Council is going to have to grapple with. But I have no qualms with the vision. Any other comments? And Commissioner Slater, do you have what you need, or do you want to? I see your hand raised. You've got the floor.
Thank you. I think I do. It would be great to hear from everyone, but I realize that we're all in different places on these issues. I think I would like to make a motion then, based on what I've heard, that we encourage the City Council to be bold on this plan. That the sense of the Commission is that this is a good opportunity for them to be bold.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? Commissioner Pollock is our second.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's why you raised your hand, Commissioner Pollock.
Yeah, bold. Go be bold or go home.
Okay, so we've got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Slater. It's seconded by Pollock, and the motion is to. Would you restate that? I know you want the City Council to be bold, but do you want to verbatim translate that for Shelby's purposes?
Oh gosh, I was hoping Shelby would rescue me.
Nah, it was so good the first time.
The Planning Commission encourages the City Council to be bold in the our Salem Comprehensive Plan.
Love that. Okay, discussion on the motion. Commissioner Pollock, do you have your hand raised for discussion, or did you forget to?
No, I forgot to take it down.
No worries. Any on the motion?
Can I ask a question before you vote? I'm sorry.
Sure, Lisa.
Just taking notes and listening, because council is going to be like, what does the Planning Commission mean? Be bold. Does that mean we agree with the draft vision and think you should move forward? Does it mean be bolder with the policies? Because almost all the comments tonight were on the draft policies, which we haven't started work on. Does it mean those 6 zoning options?
Shoot.
Go do those because those are bold. I guess it just
now I'm going to have to
frame it a little.
But I'll try. So
okay.
The Planning Commission encourages the City Council to be bold in addressing the challenges of climate action plan of greenhouse gas emissions, and to take this opportunity to think of help me out here, aggressive measures to respond to these concerns.
And we're supportive of the vision statement.
There we go. Thank you.
Because that is bold. I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Commissioner Slater, but what I'm hearing you say is that we support the bold vision, the details of which, those goals, the policies, that's to be worked out. But we, as a unit, we support the draft vision statement.
I accept that substitute motion.
Okay.
I
don't
second.
repeat that, Shelby. Okay.
I'm just gonna have to re-listen to this as I do my minutes.
Go fix it for us.
Yeah, Lisa, does that give you a little bit more than what we gave you before?
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Not seeing any hands raised for further discussion on the motion because I think we beat this like a dead horse. Shelby, will you call the roll and signify by saying aye if you're in favor of the motion?
Commissioner Augustine?
Aye.
Commissioner Griggs?
Aye.
Commissioner Heller?
Aye.
Commissioner Kopcho?
Aye.
Commissioner Levin?
Aye.
Commissioner McKinley?
No.
Commissioner Pollock?
Aye.
Commissioner Schweikart?
Aye.
And Commissioner Slater?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passed with one dissenting vote by Commissioner McKinley. So that is finished. We'll move on to the Planning Administrators Report, Lisa.
I don't really have anything. Don't really have anything to talk about. We canceled our 22nd meeting because there were no. I think it was the 22nd. No, 23rd. 23rd.
Yeah.
Yes. No public hearings, and so we checked with Commissioner Griggs, and she said okay to cancel.
I'm
so
sorry.
that's what we've done. We will be at council on the 22nd, so if you want to watch that or come and speak, please do that. And we don't currently have any items for the March meeting. One of the commissioners asked me if you have to cancel if you don't have public hearings. The answer is no. So if we don't have anything scheduled and you all want to put something on the agenda, let us know, let President Griggs know. You know, they don't always have to be canceled just because there's no public hearings. It's up to you all, so, or to the president. So just throw that out there. That's all I have.
Commissioner Kopcho has a question for you, I believe.
I remember you or Bryce, and thank you for your report, having said something in the past couple months on upcoming UDC revision.
Mm-hmm.
Can you remind me when that's slated to be? Because I just want to make sure that I keep track of it.
Yeah, we're hoping to come in April to start work sessions with the Planning Commission on a draft UDC package like we did, I guess now it's been 2 years ago. So we've been keeping a list of different items that are, you know, gaps with some new things we adopted, just changes we want to make, requests we've gotten, and then the House Bill 2001 will be part of that package. So the duplex, triplex, et cetera. So we're meeting every week with an internal team to work through those. And so our plan is in April to start work sessions so that we would do like we did last time, where Bryce kind of gives you a summary of the amendments the week before. We walk through them, get your feedback, have a discussion, and then also you would take public testimony. So that would be some way for the public to be involved as well. We'll take them in chunks. Hopefully it won't be maybe 3 work sessions or something before we initiate them and then go through the public adoption process in early summer.
Cool.
So that's the plan. If we can
Any
keep
other-
on track.
Yeah. Any more questions for Lisa? Okay, moving on to the comments for the good of the order, or how I interpret it. Are there any good comments? Not seeing any. Oh, Commissioner Pollack, you have one.
Yes, Ev. On the email, I believe that Shelby added this I had her put the ODOT notice about them fixing up Wallace Road in West Salem, but I wanted to really show, it says here that in this little statement, it says over 35,000 motorists use the highway each day. 35,000 use Wallace Road each day. So I wanted to really revisit the Marine Drive situation. And so I was going to do a little bit more research and come and not a research like in-depth research, but maybe something on the lines of a proposal on, you know, the maybe a direction we would maybe a proposal of areas that I think to be focused on Marine Drive, and for us to discuss it to see if you support or you don't support, or if you want to even tell anything to City Council about Marine Drive. So since we got an update on where it's at right now, but one of the things that we didn't really address is I don't want to give up the roundabout at the end of River Bend, and specifically because the gravel trucks are coming through there, and if they're going to have to stop at Wallace Road and River Bend, are we going to have to make them stop right there at Marine Drive? So I think a roundabout is a great thing. Yes, it's going to take, especially since they're big trucks and things, and that's going to be a good bus route there. But either way, I'm just saying that you got 35,000 cars each day going through there. At least I think it's a good time to bring up Marine Drive. And so I'm hoping in the future to bring that to you. Definitely bring it to you before I know sometime this year to discuss, because this is my last year. So I
But
want
we
to make sure.
work offline with Lisa on that.
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Schweikart.
Two things. One, Lisa, I forgot that I should maybe ask again, but like, any news as to the reappointment of those of us who are
Oh,
in limbo?
Just in limbo forever. No, actually, last night at council, the mayor appointed counselors to the boards and commissions committee. So that's the group that reviews, applicants. So that just happened last night. So now they have a committee. And I sent an email to the mayor's assistant to be like, okay, when's the committee going to meet? And I haven't heard yet. So they were just appointed last night. And so I assume sometime in the next month, maybe sooner, they will convene. I think they have a lot of work, but they do have your reappointment requests.
Just wondering.
So yeah, when I hear from them, I'll let you know.
Just minor details.
So, okay, thanks for that. That was, it just came up that I hadn't asked you about it. And then the other thing is that I was just looking back through my notes, and given that our next meeting is canceled, I just would like to say that we've reached the milestone of me not seeing any of you in person for a year. And that makes me sad because I enjoy all of your presences. That's not a correct phrase at all. I enjoy being in your presence. So so just it's amazing that it's been a year.
I believe. Yeah. Kind of crazy. Any other comments for the good of the order? Commissioner Kopcho.
I'm working on a flag submission design. Or I thought that would liven him up a little bit for VP McKinley.
Is it going to be an EV?
No, it's not. No,
Oh,
I don't think that would fall within the vexillological code. So
Sorry.
I'm trying to follow the best practices here.
The rules. Good job.
Thanks.
Any other comments, you guys? If not, I will adjourn the meeting. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.